Welcome! In this session, we will implement the user interface of our tic-tac-toe game. So I'm in code editor and we have a few imports here. TTK import for the buttons and the message box which will be used later on for displaying the winner of our game. So this is our root window here and let's start. Here, first of all, I will set the geometry of our root window. I will say let it be 560 by 375. So this is the size of our window which will display, and then I will go ahead and add some buttons. So the first button will be button 1, as we have to display 9 buttons in our tic-tac-toe game. So button 1 is equals to button widget, and where it needs to go in root, and I will call it on TTK. So it's a TTK button going in root, and text of this button will be initially set to nothing because when the game starts we want all the buttons to be showing nothing. So further we have to give the command of this button that when this button is clicked what we need to perform. So that can be given using command statements, and as I will be sending some argument to this function, so I will use lambda, and the name of the function will be button pressed, as we will be calling this function when the button is pressed. And in the argument of this function I will just be sending the number of the button. So suppose if it is button 1, I will send 1 here. It is giving an error because we have not yet defined this button, so we will do it later on. So we have created a button here with a text that is empty and a command that is button pressed function. We are using lambda here because we are sending an argument to this function. If we are not sending any argument to this function, then lambda is not required. So next what I will do here, I will set the geometry of this button. So I am putting it in a grid, as grid is the easiest way for doing this. We will have 3 rows and 3 columns where all our 9 buttons will go. So in grid, first of all I will say row, as it is a first button so it should go in row 0, and column also 0, so it's going in first row and first column top. And we can here define the size of our cell, so I will say I pad x is equals to 50 and iPad y is equals to 50. So cell will be of 50 by 50. So our first button is ready and it is also placed in the grid. Now it's time to define this function button pressed that will be called on the click of this button. So I will go ahead and define it. We will only define this function in this session, and in the next session we will implement this. So I will say the name of the function and what it is getting in the argument. It is getting the number of the button which is pressed. So if it is button 1, I am getting 1 here. So I will say here button number, as it is the number of the button which is pressed. And in the body of this function I will just make a temp variable and put it equal to button number. I'm doing this just to skip the error. We will remove this statement later on in the next session. So because we have defined this function, we have to do something in the body. So just ignore this line for this session. So our function is defined that will be called on the button click. Now this is the button 1 and we know we have to add 9 buttons in total. So first button is added. We can copy this for the other 8 buttons because the similar conditions and attributes will be there for all other buttons. So I can just copy this and add other buttons as well. So first button is added. Now this will be the second button, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and 9. So in total we have 9 buttons here added. Now we will change the variable names accordingly. So this is button 2, so I will say button 2 here, and here in the argument I will also send 2, and row and columns will also, the row will be the same for button 2 and the column will be the second column, so I will say 1. Similarly I will do it for other buttons as well. This is button number 3. The button pressed value will also be 3, and here row will be 0, column will be 2. So, but for button 4, let's do it for button 4. I will send here 4. It will be row 1 now because we are on the 4th button and column will be 0. So now let's go to the 5th button. Here the value will be 5th, row will be 1 and column will be second column. So I will say 1. And here 6th button 6. So I will send here 6. Row will be 1 and column will be the third column. So I will say 2 here. Then button number 7. I will send here 7. Row will be third row now, so column will be 0, row will be third. And for the button number 8, what we will do, we will send 8 here. Row will be third row, so it will be 2, and column will be second, so I will say 1. And then finally the button number 9, sending here 9. Row will be third, so I will be saying 2 here, and column will also be the third column, so it will be 2. So this will add all the 9 buttons into our display. So that's all from making the layout. So I will just quickly run this and we can see the output. As you can see in the window, all the 9 buttons are placed correctly in our window. So we can click these. Currently nothing is happening on this click because on this function button pressed we have yet not implemented anything. So in the upcoming session we will implement this game. For now our design looks good, and this is the interface of our tic-tac-toe game. As all the 9 buttons are placed correctly, first 3 buttons in the first row, in the second row the 3 buttons, and in third row 3 buttons, and there are 3 columns. In every column we have 3 buttons. So that's all from this session.
Welcome. In this session, we will implement the functionality behind our tic-tac-toe game. As far, we have our user interface ready. As you can see, we have buttons ready here and they are clickable. Now, let's move ahead and implement the functionality. We have a function here named button pressed that is called on every button press, and it takes one argument, that is the number of argument which is pressed in the matrix. So, let's see. First of all, the thing which we will do is we will make the player. It will be a global variable and I will set its value to 1. So we have 2 players, the first player and the second player. Initially I am setting the value of player to 1, which means that it's time for player 1 to play. So now in the body of this function I will remove this temporary line here, and first of all the first thing I will do here is I will tell it that there is a variable which is global and its name is player. So I have to tell this function that this is a global variable player. Next what I will do here is I will check for the condition. There are 2 conditions which I have to test. The first is which button is pressed, and the second is which player it is. So let's see. If, as you can see, I'm getting the button number in argument, so I will say if button number is double equals to 1, which means that it is the first button in the grid, this one here. So I'm saying if it is 1 and player is double equals to 1. So what I will do here, now the button is 1 and the player is 1. So as you can see, when the button 1 will be pressed, I will be getting 1 in the argument, so I can test it here in the condition, that button number. So if button is 1 and player is 1, I will change the text of the button to X, which means we have dedicated X to player 1 and O to player 2. So I will say here, change the text of the button 1, button1.config. I will change the text here, text is equals to X. So simply, if it is button 1 and player 1, change the text to X. And one more thing which we need to do in here is, we have to change the player now. Player will be equal to 2 now. So simply, if it is button 1 and player 1, change the text to X. And now, change the player to 2, because next time we get into this function, now player will be the second player. So, as player is global, so it will maintain the value of player. As we have changed it to 2, so next time when it comes in this button press function, the value of the player will be 2. So, now if this is not the case, if it is button number 1 but it is not player 1, so what we will do here, I will say else if button number is double equals to 1 and player is double equals to 2. So yes, this can be the case. Button number can be 1 and player can be 2. So what I will do, similarly I will change the text of the button to O. So here like this, So that's what we need to do here. And I will change the player to 1. So it's simple that if it is player 1, I'm changing it to 2, and if it is player 2, I'm changing it to 1. So every time I have to do this. So this was for the button 1. If it was button 1. As we know, we have 9 buttons in our grid, so we have to repeat this thing for all of the buttons. So what I will do, I will copy this here, and I will paste it again here. As you can see, now I can change it for button 2. Like if it is button number 2 and player 1, I will change the text of button 2. Similarly here in else spot as well. Now it's button 2. All the other things remain same because we have to check for the player 1 and player 2 every time. But this thing here will change. This will be else if. Why I'm doing it else if? If this condition, if it goes into the body of this condition, we need not to go into any other part of this. We need not to go into this, we need not to go into this, and all of the other things which we have here. Because this was true. So if this condition, it goes into this condition, we need not to move any further into any other condition. Because when one button is clicked, only one functionality will be performed. Whether it will be changed to X or it will be changed to O for that particular button. So we need not to move into any other condition. So now I will repeat this for other buttons, like this is for button 1, this one is for button 2. So I will copy this and I will paste it for button 3. Similar changes we have to do here like 3. It's button 3. I will do it for button 4 as well here. So just changing it to 4. Now for button 5. It's button 5 here. For button 6. All the buttons need to be covered here in this function. So 6, now 7. It's 8, button number 8. As you can see, we are only changing the button and the button number in the condition. And finally, the last button, which will be the button number 9. So all buttons by doing this are done now. So we have these conditions for all buttons now. So when it gets into this button pressed function, depending upon the button number, it will change the text of corresponding button. So these conditions will do the thing. So I will just run it and we will see the output here. So let's click one button. As you can see, now it was player 1 initially because first time the click will be of player 1. So it changed it to X. Now when I click on any other button, this is player 2. So as you can see, it changed it to O. First of all, it changed the first button to X, then O. Now it's turn of player 1 again. So let's click another button. As you can see, alternatively it is changing the text. So first was X, then was O, and again X. Now it should be O. As you can see, I clicked it and it changed it to O. Again X, again O. So it's working fine. Our conditions are working fine. Now the last thing which is there we have to do is, as you can see, we are not checking for the winner of the game. Now as you can see, we cannot tell the winner. There was a winner on this diagonal O because we have O on the first button, and here again O on this button, and on this button O as well. So diagonal O was winner, but it didn't stated that, so we have to implement some functionality for this. In the next session we will implement the functionality for the winner of the game.
There can be total 8 combinations where a player can win in this game. So let's discuss these combinations. The first combination is the first row. So if a player gets the first row, he is the winner. And similarly the second row and the third row. So this counts to 3, and then we have the columns. So if any player gets a column, he is also a winner. So we have this for 3 columns, the first, second and the third one. So this counts up to 6. Now the remaining 2 are the diagonals. So if a player gets this diagonal, he is a winner, and if he gets this diagonal, he is also a winner. So including these 2 diagonals, we have a total of 8 combinations for a winner. And this is true for both the players, the player X and the player O. Now let's see how we can implement this in code. Welcome! In this session we will implement a function to check for the winner of our game. So far we have this button pressed function here that is called on each button press. Now whenever the button is pressed, any button in our tic-tac-toe game, we need to check for the winner. So in the body of this function, I will move to end here. After checking these conditions, I will call the function checkWinner. So this function is called at the end of this function. As this function has yet not been implemented, so it's showing error. I will go on the top here and I will implement this function here. So I will define this function checkWinner. And in the body of this function, we have to take care of all the 8 combinations which we have discussed in the previous lecture. So let's start doing that. The first combination which we can have is this. That is the first row, as you can see in the image. So in the first row we have 3 buttons. Button 1, the first button, button 2 in the middle, and button 3 in the end. So what condition I will have here? Let's see. If button 1, I have to check for the text of the button, so I will write like this. Text is double equals to, first of all we can check for the player O, so I will say O here, and then I will add a condition AND here because all the 3 buttons should have O for this to be true. So what I will say here, button 2, we can select it from here, button 2 text is double equals to O. Next, we also have to do it for button 3, so I will add another AND and I will write button 3 and then check for the text here. And if it is double equals to O, then we have all the 3 conditions here. That is button 1, button 2 and button 3 text is equals to O, which means that we have first row completed. So this player is the winner, that is the player 2. As we know, O is our player 2 and X is our player 1. So as we have written this condition for the first row, we also have to write for all the other 8 combinations here. So let's see. The second combination here is the second row. So what I will do here is I will write a OR here at the end here, OR. So if this is not the case, if these 3 are not O, so I have to go for the button that is 4, 5 and 6. So I will just copy this thing and I will change the text of the buttons from here, and after OR we will add this. Now let's implement it for all the other 8 combinations. So button 1, button 2 and button 3, that is first one, and then button 4, I will just change the button number here, 4, 5 and 6 is the second row. Similarly, I will add a OR here which will say that whether this one or this one. So all the 8 combinations we have the player O winner. So I will just copy this thing here and paste it for the 8 times. So we have first and second combination there. Now this one is third and this is third row. So in the third row what we have 7, 8 and 9. Button number 7, button number 8 and button number 9. So now next we will do it for the columns. So in the first column we have 1 and then 4 and then 7. Similarly for the second column we have 2, 5 and 8. 2, 5 and 8. So just we have to change the button numbers here for all the 8 combinations, and then in the third column we have 3, 6 and 9. 3, 6 and 9. Now only the 2 diagonals are left. So in the diagonal what we have here, we have 1, 5 and 9 here. That is the first diagonal, and then we can do it for the other diagonal, that will be 3, 5 and 7. 3, 5 and 7. So as you can see, we have checked here for all the 8 combinations, and this is for, now I will remove the last OR and I will put it inside of bracket, and then I will add this. As you can see, we have checked all the 8 combinations which we can have for player O, and we have to do it for player X as well. But before doing that, in the body of this if it went into the body of if, we will show a message box here which will show for the winner. So what will be the title here? Title will be winner of game, and then we will say player O is winner in the body of that message box. And similarly, we will repeat this thing for player X, and we can change it to elif. So now all the O's are to be replaced by X here. So that will do the part of X. So I will just quickly change these to X. So I have changed all the O's to X, and I will change the player winner here as well. So that's all from our function check winner. As you can see, I have checked for all the 8 combinations for button O. So if they are true, the O is winner, and if it's X, then X is the winner. I will just go through this function again. We are checking for the condition here. This is the first combination. If this is true, if first row is O, then it will move into the body of this if condition and print the message box on the screen. And then we have or means that whether this condition is true or any of the other 8 combination is true. So if any of these 8 combination is true, any of this, so it will go into the body. And if any of this 8 condition is true, it will go into the body. So you have to note this point here, that we can go into the body of this if with only one condition true from these 8, because we have or here. So if it is or, which means that any one of this can be true, we will go into the body. So from the 8 combinations, if any combination is there, we can have a winner here. So we have called this function here at the bottom. As you can see, now we can run this and see our output. So our game is here. Let's see. The first player is X. Okay. I will like to make X winner. Let's say this one is 0. Then X press this. O press this. And then finally, if I press this button in the diagonal, we will have a winner X. So it should say X is a winner. As you can see, it says player X is winner. So that's working. I will say OK here. And let's run this game again and make the player O winner. So I will just do it here. Let's X be there. O, X. Now I will make O here. Okay, X here. O here. X. Now if I press this button, that is the 6th button, so it should make O as a winner because we have the second row in common. As you can see, it says player O is winner. Why? Because this second row is complete O now. So our game is working fine. So our tic-tac-toe game is ready and it's working fine. We can do a lot of more optimizations in our game, like we can change the text size here as X and O are a little bit smaller here. We can change the text size, we can change the colors of our game to look it more better, and we can do some optimizations in our code as well. So, but this is the basic working of our tic-tac-toe game. So our game is working fine. We are getting the winner player here, and this will happen for all the combinations that we have discussed. So this is a working tic-tac-toe game.